We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
Welcome, everybody, to a brand new edition of Granite State Live on this Tuesday, the 30th day, last day of September 2025. Great to have you along on this Tuesday evening. I'm your host, Keith Hansen, the unapologetic contrarian conservative, never apologizing for my toxic white masculinity. I can't help it, kids. I was born this way, and my doctor considers a pre-existing condition. That means that there's no help for me. So, gotta live with it. Never apologizing for my Christian faith, heavily armed as always. Great to have you along. 833-603-8255 if you would like to be a part of tonight's program. Again, 833-603-TALK.
And I'm Julian Asard, as usual. You know, I haven't changed. Blue-collar intellectual, here to shatter your preconceived notions and everything you've been lied about to by the media, your favorite influencer, and every single fucking politician and pundit out there. And in case you haven't figured out, I'm your favorite uppity Negro, here to piss you off today. Have a good day to everybody.
Is that why we have a disclaimer on the show now?
Yes.
I happened to notice that there was a disclaimer on the show. Could you put that back up again, please, Juan? I want to read the disclaimer. It's been a while since I've had a disclaimer.
I'm going to give Juan...
The opinions expressed on this show are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the positions of Right America Media or its management.
I'm okay with that.
Bullshit. Well, yeah, everything that I say you agree with. That's it's been a while since I've had it. I actually loved getting the the opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the host, guests, or callers. Yeah, that was always a favorite of mine. It's like, all right, are you expecting something controversial?
I'm going to give Juan that audio from Coach Carter where he goes, "Can you believe this? Uppity Negro, sir."
Yeah. All right, we've got a great show coming up for you tonight. We're going to be joined by former New Hampshire State Representative Leah Cushman. I guess, you know, some people, they look at once a state rep, always a state rep in terms of the ability to try to affect and influence change. And some people going to Leah with something that had concerned them about New Hampshire family court. Now, this has been a topic we've discussed since the inception of this program, and of course, going back to my early days on the airwaves here in New Hampshire. New Hampshire family court. Custody issues, custody battles. It is something that is one of the most distressing legal processes, I think. And it's already, listen, when we're talking about family matters, when we're talking about divorce, when we're talking about custody, when we're talking about the welfare of children, it's going to be an emotionally charged topic. And then you have the New Hampshire family court system, which and again, I said this is something that I had been discussing since my early days on New Hampshire airwaves. If I had a nickel, that proverbial nickel, for every time I had somebody reach out to me and say, would you please do a story? Would you please do an expose? Would you please push into the forefront of the conversation what's happening in family court? Because sex offenders are being given custody of children. Drug addicts are being given custody of children. Unfit parents are being given custody of children. And it is beyond alarming. It's disturbing. So we're going to have that conversation coming up with Leah here in just a bit. We're also going to be talking about the FBI and James Comey. If you didn't happen to catch this earlier in the week, James Comey indicted on 2 counts of lying to Congress, perjury. A very simple 2-page indictment that, of course, the Democrats are now coming out and excoriating as lawfare. Like, the Republican Party has invented lawfare, that conservatives have somehow now weaponized government. No, it's called holding people accountable. Lawfare isn't holding people accountable. Lawfare is going after people for nothing other than their political affiliations.
Kind of like what they did with the Trump administration.
Well, I mean,
the past 10 years.
We can go back even further than that, Julian. We can talk about Lois Lerner and the IRS being sicked on conservative organizations by the Obama administration.
Yep.
So lawfare is something that is not necessarily new. It's a newer concept going back really to Obama. Obama started it. Biden definitely took it to a whole new level. And of course, the left, being the masters of the twisted, projected confession, are now coming out and saying, well, that the conservatives are now engaging in lawfare. Let's just clarify one thing. When conservatives and Republicans, who at least ostensibly are the party of law and order, identify actual criminal behavior, actual criminal malfeasance, actual criminal, I don't want to say conspiracies, but for lack of a better term, a conspiracy. And I'm not talking about in terms of the conspiracy theory. I'm talking when 2 or more people conspire to bring about an end result. Yeah, there is a mechanism for disposing of that in a criminal court. That is not lawfare. That is holding people accountable. And it has nothing to do with who we like and who we don't like. In fact, Comey is, I believe he's been a registered Republican. Mm-hmm. He's a Democrat in action, but he's a Republican in name only. Yeah. Oh, RINO. Where did I hear that before? Oh, that's the Rhino. That's right. John Bolton.
What was that
another one.
What was that you always say? The Biden administration ripped off the Band-Aid when it comes to using lawfare and weaponizing the justice system against people that they don't like, going after prior opponents and stuff. And the Democrats have been doing it for a long time. No, what
I think what you're thinking of is when I've said that by and large, there has been a time-honored tradition in this country that the incoming administration, by and large, and I mean, I'm going to say by and large, I'm going to say unilaterally, really up until Trump, by and large, or unilaterally, I should say, that they have overlooked whatever transgressions of the previous administration have occurred. Now, Trump, during his first campaign, and then, of course, during the first 4 years of his presidency, you remember in New Hampshire, I mean, the rallies that were here in New Hampshire, the chants, lock her up, lock her up. I can't tell you how many times I would be at a campaign rally here in New Hampshire, and the crowd, I remember the SNHU arena, the night before the election.
Yep.
And it was like a rock concert. There were lasers and light shows and gobos and everything else. And the bottom line is that the chants of lock her up, echoed through that filled to capacity stadium. In fact, there were thousands of people that were standing outside.
But I never believed it. Because that's the rule.
Well, by and large, yes. And to be honest, that's not something that we expected to see happen. Yeah. I wasn't expecting to see Hillary prosecuted.
No,
I kind of figured that it was going to be something that would happen towards the tail end, or it would be during term number 2. Now, I don't believe that Trump expected to not go for 2 consecutive terms.
Yep.
I thought that, and I believed that he would be in there for 8 years, that Biden would not win. And of course, if you look at the actual numbers and the science behind it, Biden didn't win. I'm not an election denier. We've just talked to many, many, many people who have said, "Look, here's the deal. We've all seen the physical evidence." Mm-hmm. It doesn't make somebody a conspiracy theorist when they've seen the actual evidence. And I'm not talking, conjecture and speculation. We've seen the ballot box stuffing. We've seen the mules dropping ballots off.
We also saw Mark Elias on a podcast very blatantly saying flat out that they were going to use lawfare and outright ignore the laws, the election laws in states all across the country, every battleground state and county in blue Bellwether County, in order to move 2.5% of the vote, and the other 5% they would take care of a different way.
We're going to talk more about that here. That's going to be coming up in the second segment. But before we get that, and I say second segment, it's going to be right around quarter of the hour, I believe. Or is that 7:30? 7:30. Okay. All right. So without further ado, I do want to bring on former New Hampshire State Representative, Republican State Representative Leah Cushman. Leah, thank you so much for jumping on the program. I wanted to bring you on because there was a post that you put out, New Hampshire Family Court granting custody of an innocent child to a serial sex offender. The serial sex offender, let's just shame him the way that he should be. Christopher Mark Chartier, who his last known address was 490 Stockdale Circle in Rollinsford, New Hampshire. This is public information, by the way, folks. He's a registered sex offender. Criminal history, multiple convictions for aggravated felonious sexual assault, incest, indecent exposure, and lewdness felonies. These are all convictions from looks like April 20th of 2004. 2 counts of aggravated felonious sexual assault on a victim under 13, indecent exposure and lewdness, aggravated felonious sexual assault on a victim under 13, 2 counts of incest, 3 counts of sexual assault, 2 counts of, again, victim under 16 years of age, felonious sexual assault. Well, this guy sounds like the kind of person you want to bring home to meet mom. And now, evidently, the New Hampshire Family Court has granted custody of this individual, to this individual, I should say. And it appears as though not only that, but this is a person who also has had extensive exposure to children. This is a person who has been spending time while on parole, spending time with minors, attending child-based theme parks and events, having active social media accounts, having drinking parties with minors, being present and participating in without staff knowledge, approval, or supervision activities at Storyland, Canopy Lake Park, Great Wolf Lodge, Off the Wall Kids, Barrington Timber Nook, Portsmouth Christian Academy, Northeast Ballet Theater, Hilltop Fun Center, Elliott Baptist Church, University of New Hampshire, Rollinsford Recreation Department. Why the hell is a level 3 sex offender having any access to any of these facilities where children go, aggregate, play, anything? Explain to me how this is legal.
Yeah, it's not legal. It's not legal. So I received the letter, and it was it's anonymous. It doesn't say. It just says concerned citizens of on the seacoast. And yeah, this guy has just been all over the place. And what's striking is that there's been multiple investigations. The parole board is aware that he's violated his parole. He was sentenced to, I believe, 20 years. I have case summaries that were attached with what was sent to me. But what's striking is parole investigated, acknowledged misconduct and breaking of restrictions, but did not act. DCYF has repeatedly investigated the multiple reports with multiple minors, come to various conclusions and expressed concerns, but do not act. Local police departments have been notified. Reports came to their own conclusions and didn't act. So nobody is acting to protect the kids who are exposed to this man.
So what is the role of New Hampshire Family Court? I mean, I think most people understand that, but I'm going to ask you that partially out of sarcasm, but then partially out of genuine interest for, if you remember the movie Office Space, what is it you do here? Was one of the famous lines.
Money.
What is it that the New Hampshire Family Court does here?
Money.
Yeah. So, well, they take all of the cases of abuse and neglect that are petitioned by DCYF. They also, and they adjudicate DCYF will petition, and the state will be the petitioner, and then the accused is the respondent. And so they'll take cases. They also deal with divorces and custody. They also deal with juvenile justice and CHINS cases, and termination of parental rights cases. Oh, and domestic abuse.
So when it comes to somebody who is, when you talk about levels, we have various levels of sex offenders. He is required to be on the sex offender registry, but a level 3 sex offender is a person that has a very high propensity or likelihood to reoffend. This is not a low-level offender who is, really, maybe it was like, there are people who are registered sex offenders because they urinated in public, or registered sex offenders because they, at 18 years of age, had a sexual relationship with somebody who was 15 or 16. So, it was consensual, but technically it was statutory rape. They still wind up with a sex offender designation. This is a guy who was charged and convicted of aggravated sexual felonious assault on 2 individuals, one under the age of 13, another one under the age of 16, and 2 counts of incest, which can only lead one to believe, I don't have the actual facts of the case in front of me, but a logical deduction tells me incest along with aggravated felonious sexual assault of a 13 or under 13 and under 16. This guy was molesting or raping his own children.
Right. That's what it reads like, but of course that criminal case would have the children as John and Jane Doe's.
Correct.
And it doesn't say in the letter who the children are, who he has custody of. I think it is his children. Deeply troubling. Yeah, 50-50 custody of his children without supervision, so no check-ins.
So, who is ultimately responsible for overseeing the actions of New Hampshire Family Court?
Site. And so
we've got a connectivity issue here with Leah. We do apologize. We'll see what we can do to get that.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, you were just kind of in the video world hiccup there. So
okay. It used to be the Judicial Conduct Commission, but that was repealed. Because the legislature mistakenly thought we'll throw it all out because one little piece of it is deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. So rather than just eliminate that line and fix it, they got rid of it altogether. And now there's literally no one except the administrative judge of the circuit court. He is the one who appoints them. They are not judicial officers. They are administrative law judges. They're not constitutionally appointed like, Superior Court judges are, and then confirmed by the council. They're just appointed by the administrative judge of the circuit court. So therefore, the Judicial Conduct Committee, everyone will find as they go up the ladder to try to complain about their rights being violated in the court, will reject complaints about family court judges because they say that they're not judges and they have no oversight. So there's no oversight besides the general court and the administrative judge of the circuit court. And the general court refuses to take any real action to hold the judges accountable, the administrative law judges accountable.
So the logical question is, who's looking out for the kids in the state of New Hampshire, Leah?
Well, I would say in a lot of instances, it's the same kind of group of people. Like in the legislature, the oversight commissions and committees on DHHS and DCYF and Children's Services, the Governor's Commission on Children's Services, which has their meetings not broadcast, by the way, and that's where a lot of the real disclosure takes place. They meet the third Friday of every month, FYI. But they're stacked with all the same, mostly the same group of people. Kim Rice did a lot of damage when she was on the Children and Family Law Committee as chair. She there's a lot of loose language in the statutes that make it so that determining if a parent is fit or not is very can be manipulated, and they actually the family court can waive any rule of evidence. And I think I mentioned this the last time I was on. So they can decide to take all of the evidence from one party and dismiss all of the evidence from another party, and they have and they do. So they can really manipulate a case for a desired outcome if they so choose.
Have there been any indications on which way this court is leaning? And I ask that only because, again, I've had a number of people who have reached out saying, I have been done a disservice in the family court. In one instance, a mother who was, and I mean, I had a chance to pull her background, and she was absolutely a multiple serial offender when it came to drugs, winds up getting custody of children over a father who was fit, who had a job. And when I say fit, I mean, he was healthy. He was not a drug addict. He was not an alcoholic. He was working. He was able to provide for the kids. But it seemed as though the argument from the court was, well, kids belong with their mother. That's it. Doesn't matter that she's a junkie. Doesn't matter that she's got a revolving door of men on her. You know, it just, we got to have the kids with the mother, and that was it. And they totally overlooked the father in favor of the mother, who was completely unfit, just based upon prima facie evidence. So now, what's the appeal process? I mean, if somebody is going through this process, and arguably many people have, and they come out feeling like, I was done a disservice, what is the appeal process if somebody feels as though the court has erred?
Well, I'll answer your first question first, about, what it seems to be their agenda is. And you'll hear mothers say, oh, the judge hates mothers. They just hate women. And you'll hear sometimes men say that the family court's so biased against men. But really, the factors that influence whether the court is going to be against you are if you're pro se, if you have money, if you will continue to fight for your kid so they know that they can kind of dangle your kid out in front of you and keep your kid in a less than ideal situation and keep you coming back again and again, filing motions and appearances and getting orders placed that all cost money to be fulfilled, such as therapy and visitation and mediation so the fact, and then it also with DCYF, a lot of the time there will be like relentless action against seemingly, as far as I can tell from vetted cases of people, and I've looked at their cases, they were innocent, and they pointed out that DCYF did something and messed up with their child, whether their child was in foster care or a finding that they made, and then DCYF will retaliate because they're all trying to avoid being liable for lawsuits and things like that. And then to your second question, appeals in New Hampshire. So all of the facts are found in the family court, and the appeals go directly to the Supreme Court. They don't go to the Superior Court, and they cannot appeal on the facts and the merits of the case. They can only re-examine whether law was applied appropriately, and they almost always will just rule that it was the discretion of the judge was the reason that things went the way they did.
So the judge could literally wake up on the wrong side of the bed, rule in a certain manner that is in stark contrast to what the best outcome would be based upon evidence, and you're stuck with it. You just got to keep going through the process because somebody's generating money off of this in its entirety.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of stakeholders in the court. It actually was set up to be a business in 2007 and 2008. There was a judicial retreat, and it was actually Judge Broderick who brought in a consultant and said, we need to run this court as a business because we're not going to meet the threshold to get the Title IV funding and other federal funds with the small number of indigent families in New Hampshire who actually would be needing those Title IV funds and child support orders. So that's the child support portion of the Social Security Act. That's the enforcement. And it was supposed to be a recoupment program for public benefits, just basically supporting indigent families in a divorce, and making sure that the state would get back some of the money, and avoid some welfare costs and things like that. But they're applying them inappropriately. They're misusing the funds, and they've been found to misuse a lot of funds. I mean, Title 4E is supposed to be for foster kids. And foster families and training and reunification and preventive services. $21 million are designated from those funds for this fiscal year, and zero of that money is allocated for foster families or foster children or reunification or preventive services.
So you run it like a
misusing.
Yep. So you run it like a business, and the bottom line is that we have to turn a profit. We turn a profit by getting lots and lots and lots of repeat business. We get lots and lots and lots of repeat business by making sure that we never actually rule conclusively in a way that is best for the children. Gee, it's no wonder why we've got so many screwed up kids out there. Thank you, judicial system. Thank you, psychiatrists. Thank you, disease model. Thank you, pharmaceutical companies. And then we wonder why our society goes to hell in a handbasket the way that it does. Former Republican New Hampshire State Representative Leah Cushman, always a pleasure. I wish we were talking under different circumstances, but we'll get you back on as we continue to follow this. I want to dive more into this. I think it's a conversation that definitely warrants, it necessitates being had. So we will have that conversation.
Great. Thank you so much. All
right. Thank you. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be checking in with Keith Gross. He's the author of Dirt Roads to Runways, Defending the American Dream for the Next Generation. We're going to be talking about FBI investigations, James Comey, whether or not John Bolton is next up on the indictment block. Much more, plus your phone calls and more coming up when Granite State Live continues. Don't go away.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Unleashing your humble alpha is the key factor to unlocking profound leadership, unshakable confidence, clarity of purpose, and the quality of life you dream of. As combat veterans and military leaders Stephen Kuhn and Lane Balone decode how you can master your life, conquer everything that stands in your way, improve your ability to cope with stress, and run toward greatness. You can find Unleash Your Humble Alpha on Amazon.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. Yeah, you just stand out. Look at that. It's so sad.
Welcome back to a Tuesday night edition of Granite State Live on this Tuesday, the 30th day of September, 2025. Last day of September, going to be welcoming in October. Summer, I actually said to somebody today, boy, I thought summer was over. But boy, it's absolutely been fantastic, spectacular weather this past week. So I don't know if this is our indigenous people summer, but got to be honest with you, it's pretty nice out there. So we'll take it as long as we can. All right. Well, we got a bunch of stuff coming up here. We've seen in the news this past week a lot of conversation about the FBI, James Comey lying to Congress, so on and so forth. And, the bottom line is this. We saw during Obama, and we certainly saw during the Biden administration, some pretty sketchy and nefarious activity coming out of some of the highest law enforcement agencies in this country. January 6th, big deal. We had Brandon Strzok on the program a number of times, interviewed him at CPAC a number of times. And, you still hear the progressives and the leftists and the Democrats talking about January 6th as this was, this was literally like the Generation Z's September 11th. When you hear these people. So report that the FBI deployed 274 plainclothes agents to the U.S. Capitol when January 6th occurred. You've got James Comey lying to Congress about leaking information designed to take Donald Trump down based upon bogus reports that were paid for by Hillary Clinton. This is the stuff of spy novels, but no, this is our reality. So we want to dive more into this with two guests during this segment. Keith Gross, legal analyst and former assistant state attorney and prosecutor for the great state of Florida, author of Dirt Roads to Runways, Defending the American Dream for the Next Generation, and filmmaker Chris Burgard, director of groundbreaking documentaries Capital Punishment and The War on Truth. Gentlemen, thank you so much for jumping on the program this evening. Welcome.
Good to be with you.
You betcha.
All right, so let's start with Chris. Chris, 274 plainclothes FBI agents deployed to the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Now, I think the common sense approach to this, or at least the pundits would say, well, it would make sense. You're going to have plainclothes people out there. People are more likely to do things that, if they don't think that somebody's watching them, so it's probably not a bad idea to have plainclothes officers. Career in law enforcement myself, I have done plainclothes operations. I've done the undercover stuff, so we understand the validity of that. But how many of those people were actually inciting otherwise law-abiding people, literally entrapping people, and resulting in what we saw some people doing, not all, but some, on January 6th?
Well, as you're going to see, we're putting out the director's cut of The War on Truth. I don't know if you know the background, fellas. I made the first movie, Capital Punishment, on January 6th. I was there on January 6th with my family, my partner, Nick Searcy. And there was a lot of similarities going on that day to what I experienced in Central America when they were trying to overthrow governments down there. I made the movie Capital Punishment, and then while I was on the border making another movie with Tom Homan about the border, I come back to my ranch in Texas, and I've got the FBI coming up a quarter mile in my ranch investigating me as a terrorist threat to the United States of America. So after going through as much legal stuff as we could to get that settled down, my partner Nick and I decided to make The War on Truth. This Friday, we're coming out with the director's cut. It's 3 hours and 33 minutes long. We're be giving it away free to America. And what you're going to see in that movie, to answer your question, my long answer to you there, sir, is a guy named Bobby Powell, former Marine journalist, and he had footage of two gentlemen that he swore were undercover federal agents. And they sure look like it. And he photographed them breaking windows and forcing people into, holding doors open, pushing people in. They were leading and pushing violence and the break-in. And when Bobby turned his camera on them and they saw that it said press, all of a sudden, one of these guys just turns around. All of a sudden, now he's helping to defend the window, did a complete 180. So Bobby takes his footage. He tries to show it to anybody to listen, sends it to Congress, sends it to every television network, and nobody will touch it. Nobody will air this footage. He ends up having a lunch with a former congressman that's a friend of his. And in this lunch, according to Bobby, Congressman offers him $100,000 to lose the footage. He says no. Then he offers him $200,000. Bobby says, I'm a former Marine. You'd have to kill me. I'm not going to stop. And supposedly the former congressman said, well, that could be arranged. Bobby's no longer with us. He died of a heart attack on September 5th. I wish you could see what's going on, because it wasn't just those 2 undercover agents. And it's not just the 274 undercover FBI agents. How many other assets do they have? How many other informants? What about the ATF agents that were there? What about the DHS agents that were there? What about the CIA guys that were there? What about possible undercover military guys that were there? And I say all this as a guy who's worked 20 years with law enforcement. My father was law enforcement, a veteran. My father graduated from the 109th session of the FBI Academy. And when they came after me and then threatened my family, the FBI did, it wasn't the same bureau that my dad worked with. And after I presented them my legal team and said, hey, I'll sit down, I'll talk to you guys, let's work this out, we'll film the whole thing. They went around my attorneys to try to get me out of my county in Texas into a different county to Mike Flynn me. I've done 3 projects with General Flynn. And this was an operation that was run at the highest levels from the ground up. That's all I can say, guys. It's no different. If you look at Ukraine, you know what happened in Ukraine in 2014. That was a dress rehearsal for January 6th. And good men and women of the Bureau and other organizations, agencies, were used by very corrupt leaders against the American people.
You know, one of the things that I've said about January 6th was I think personally, it was less about punishing the people that were there. It was more about making an example out of them. To say to people, because you had a lot of people that would don't tread on me. You get the Gadsden flags up. I'm a patriot. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I think this is really an opportunity for the government to say to those people, if you think for 1 second that we are going to sit idly by while you try to take your country back, that you spout this rhetoric about being a revolutionary and how you're going to take your country back and you're going to use the mandates of the founding documents to reestablish new guards for your future security, we've got another thing coming. Because exactly as Kamala Harris said, I can do more damage with this than I can with a firearm. And we're going to show you exactly the full force of the federal government. And they went after people. I mean, I had a knock on my door from FBI agents. I wasn't there. I was in my radio studio at the time on WSMN broadcasting a live FM transmitted radio show. So my alibi was watertight, but they still came to my door because they thought that crazy right-wing conservative up in New Hampshire was one of the rioters. So I told them, summarily where to go.
My brother-in-law was there.
I hate to interrupt you. Why would they do that? Why would they knock on your door? You have to ask yourself, what list were you on? There was a prearranged list before this event happened. That was a signature hallmark of an intelligence operation.
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I was the state chapter president of Oath Keepers back when Oath Keepers for the state of Florida, back when Oath Keepers was actually like a legitimate organization, touring and going around the entire state along with Bob Lewis, who was the commander of the Collier County Sheriff's Department bomb squad, talking about how military and law enforcement personnel had a duty to uphold the constitutional oath that they took. But I know exactly why, because somebody saw a picture, a still of somebody who was about 20 years my junior wearing a flat brim Chicago Bulls hat, and said, oh, nope, that's that conservative right wing Keith Hansen. So I look at the FBI agent and I'm like, unless you've got the IQ of a turnip, you can't possibly look at this picture and think that this is me. Unless somehow, some way, I've managed to age myself 20 years over the course of about 2 weeks. It was the stupidest thing. But the way that they did it, I was actually on a gun line training state troopers on firearms when I got a phone call from an unknown number. I figured it was a spam call, so I answered it. And Keith Hansen? Yes. This is so-and-so from the FBI. Okay, how can I help you? Where are you? Because you're not home. They were calling me from my doorstep. All right, that's it, gentlemen. I'll give me your number, and my attorney will get in touch with you. Anyway, the point being, this was an intimidation tactic, solely. If you ever think that you're going to speak out against your government, at least while Biden is in office, you better think again, because you will face the full force of the brutality of the federal government, and we will lock you in some institutions so far away on preventive detention and a pretrial hold, you'll never see the light of day.
My brother-in-law was present on January 6th. He was there at the Capitol, never entered the building, was not involved in anything, and has gotten consistent visits from the FBI since.
So, your thoughts on this being more of an intimidation tactic than it was anything else?
Well, you're 100% right, and it's even bigger than that. If you understand fifth-generation warfare, if you understand taking out a state from within, this is part of a bigger operation to fundamentally change the United States of America, because you have to go after the people. Why were there so many veterans and so many Christians thrown in jail first? Because when people believe that their rights come from God and their allegiances to the country, not to the state, those are the people that you have to get out of the way first. And that's what you've seen. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, absolutely, it was to send a message. But it was also take off the head of the snake.
Keith Groves, the legal analyst and former assistant state attorney and prosecutor for the great state of Florida. The James Comey indictment here, of course, now that's for lying to Congress relating to the leaking of information about the bogus Hillary Clinton report designed to tank Trump's presidency. The left is coming out right now and saying this is lawfare, this is malicious and selective prosecution of political opponents. I say, listen, this is accountability, because clearly crimes were committed, not only in the Comey matter, but also certainly in J6. So not even getting through the first year of Trump's presidency at this point, what do you think that we're going to be seeing over the next, 12 to 24 months in terms of actual accountability, which is, I think, really what most Americans want simply?
Well, I agree. I think we do generally want to see some real accountability, because looking backwards, there's an extensive pattern of no accountability. You had Biden, who clearly committed crimes. They said he committed crimes, but they didn't want to prosecute him because they decided he was too old to prosecute, not mentally fit. And then, of course, they sent him back with the nuclear codes to be in the Oval Office for 2 years. But before that, you had Hillary Clinton destroying emails, possessing classified information, doing a litany of things that were definitely prosecutable. No prosecution. They decided they didn't want to prosecute her, didn't even give a real reason. So when we look at what's happening under the new Trump administration, we see that the wheels of justice are turning slowly, but at least they are turning, and they're turning fairly. We saw John Bolton. He was raided. I expect we'll see an indictment for him sometime soon. And now we've got an actual indictment for James Comey. A massive step in the right direction. When he lied to Congress, that was our government lying to us. James Comey was the government. The congressional representatives, those are our representatives. That's the people as far as Washington is concerned. If we lie to the government, they're going to prosecute us for perjury. But too often the government lies to us and gets away with it. So I think it's a strong signal that Trump's sending that they're prosecuting him for this, because the way this lie was used in conjunction with a lot of other lies to create the whole Russiagate hoax and the entire derailment of Trump's first term, it was unprecedented. One FBI agent has already gone to jail for lying to the FISA court to get the warrants necessary to spy on the Trump campaign. I think what we're seeing now with the Comey indictment is the tip of the iceberg.
So help me to find some balance. And I'm going to throw this out to whoever wants to take this, Keith, Chris. On one hand, I want accountability. I want to see people held accountable. But I also understand, too, that unfortunately, this postmodern concept of your reality is your reality and my reality is my reality has become manifest in our society. What I mean by that is, if you are on the left side of the aisle, you look at the right and say, well, you know what? These people are committing crimes. These people are engaging in malfeasance. These people are illegal actors. They are immoral. They are unethical, and we have to prosecute them. And of course, if you're a conservative, if you're on the right wing, you look at the actual crimes being committed and perpetrated by members of the left and say, well, we have to hold them accountable. So as much as I want to see accountability, gentlemen, one of the things that concerns me is I think we've crossed the line into this territory, which is kind of like criminal gangs going back at each other, the Bloods and the Crips. We're locked in a never-ending battle of I got you last.
Political gangbanging at its
So,
best.
so where does this go? And what is stopping now? Number one, anything that Trump does over the next 3 years, 3.5 years, from just simply being undone by the stroke of a pen in the form of pardons by a Democrat president, if one happens to wind up in the White House in 2028. And then also, what prevents a Democrat administration from now re-engaging in lawfare against conservatives, against Republicans, trying to right the wrongs that they perceive were committed and perpetrated during the Trump administration?
And what stops the next Republican administration from stopping the investigations and stopping the prosecutions in the first place? Because I see nothing from anybody else that's going to take Trump's place in 2028.
Let them answer the question, though.
Well, that's a good point, too. But I mean, what stops people from using the pardon power? Well, if you're the president, the pardon power is virtually limitless. So nothing is the real answer to that. What stops the left from engaging in lawfare against the next Republican candidate and against conservatives? Hopefully people at the ballot box who see that that's unacceptable, because there's a big difference between what's happening now, where people are being prosecuted and investigated for real crimes, as compared with what happened over the last several years against Donald Trump and most of his supporters who were around him. In those cases, crimes were being basically invented. That wasn't the prosecution following the evidence where it led and prosecuting real crimes. That was prosecutors, some of whom, like James, for example, in New York, literally running, saying, I will get Trump. They were finding the man and looking for the crime. So that is a big, big difference. And if people don't hold them responsible at the ballot box, I'm not sure anything will change. This could become exactly what you've described, of a tit for tat every time administrations change. That doesn't end in a very happy story.
I'm going to ask you something that is probably going to be the most controversial thing that you've heard today. Do you really think that the American people are smart enough, intelligent enough, politically, civically, economically literate enough to actually be able to discern fact from fantasy, reality from fiction, and go in and make the right decision at the ballot box? Because that ballot box has failed us time and time and time and time and time again.
It has, and I still believe the people are smart enough to figure it out. I think that we don't give the people enough credit. They see what's happening. They can see through the BS of Washington. And we've got to put our faith in that, because if we give up our faith in that, what is left? Do we just give up and surrender the republic? We can't do that. So we have got to expect that our fellow man will start paying attention and start voting these people out when they deserve to be voted out.
Are we even doing a good enough job of informing them and making sure that they see it?
I mean, 50% of the population put chemical sludge in their bodies in exchange for a Krispy Kreme donut under the pretense that there was some pandemic that was going to kill them. I mean, really, we have to have a pragmatic conversation about the stupidity of the American voter who gets their news from 15-second sound bites from TikTok.
So, gentlemen, we have to put this in concept of what's actually going on. The United States of America has been at war for a while. It's a fifth-generation war. Knowledge is power, okay? And right now, we've been pitted against each other, propaganda through the media, through indoctrination through the universities, and by corrupted officials. So I agree, absolutely. The American people will make the right decisions and take it to the ballot boxes if they are given the right information. Now look how fast things are changing. Things that were conspiracy theories 6 months ago are actually happening. All right, when I made the first J6 movie, Capital Punishment, when I made The War on Truth, and I showed you Christopher Wray lying to Congress, people like, oh, he'll never get indicted, nothing ever happened, and saying that he's lying, that's just a conspiracy theory. Well, let me tell you, right after James Comey, I'm sure Chris Wray's probably lawyering up right about now too. But you have to show people the truth, and that's what they haven't seen. Americans are good people, but we've been so divided, and that's on purpose. If you understand fifth generation war and you understand the color revolution, look at what happened in the Ukraine. You take this side of the people, you give them all this information, and you say, these guys are against you, we'll arm you, we'll help you. Then you go to the other side, we'll arm you, we'll help you. Boom, you get chaos, and then you come in and you take control. We've seen it in Egypt, we've seen it in Venezuela. This is what has just happened in the United States. So yes, We can come together if we have the right information. And in order to do that, you have to take out the bad guys that are putting in all the propaganda.
Can you do a quick breakdown of fifth generation warfare for our viewers who don't quite understand what you're talking about?
Absolutely. And there's an outstanding book that was written by Boone Cutler and General Michael Flynn called The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. Unfortunately, 2 days after Charlie was taken out, and Charlie was a friend of mine. I hope you all pray for his family. 2 days after Charlie was taken out, Boone Cutler, the man who wrote the book, Fifth Americans Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare, he died of a heart attack. But basically, when you can't take a country down from the outside, and if you've ever read The Art of War, you take it from the inside by 1,000 different cuts. So you bring enough fentanyl across the border that you're losing young Americans. We've had more people die of fentanyl in this country than we've lost in Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq combined. Okay, then you come and you do things, you grab control of their minds and the information they get. There's software being used. We developed it to use in the sandbox to stop young Muslim men from becoming suicide bombers. You could hit them based on algorithms and send them information that you could steer where they go, especially people that were marginal on the side, and keep them from being a suicide bomber. On the same time, now that software is being used in the United States of America against Americans to get us all on the left, to get us all on the right. So the algorithm finds you, it identifies you, and it keeps feeding you content that's going to get you more and more worked up. So while half of America is disagreeing with the other America, the guys that are setting this up are trying to drive us to civil war. They absolutely thought that you would have white militia guys, 3 summers ago out on the streets fighting Antifa. That didn't happen. Charlie Kirk just died. There were a lot of people thinking that people were going to rise up and go after trans people. That didn't happen. What did the conservatives do? They prayed for those folks. This is working on so many different levels. I worked the border for 18 years. Like I said, I saw more trained soldiers coming across the border 3 years ago in Texas at Eagle Pass than I'd seen in 18 years. Where are these guys coming from? They're being staged out of Venezuela. What's Venezuela? Venezuela is where China, using its Iranian proxies, sends folks to come in and do what they do coming across the border. And these kids, when they're coming across, whether they're Trinidad, whether they're military, they tried to hide it, but they didn't hide it well. We are under attack. And fellas, I'm very concerned that what's going to happen in the near future is you're going to see more shootings, more explosions, more attacks, because I'm afraid that the people that sent these folks across the border are going to push a go button. And that's going to tear at the fabric. That's part of fifth generation war. You create such a chaos that the structure can't hold up, and then you come in and you seize power. So that's where we are.
So fifth generation warfare, what I term the algorithmic abyss, that's what's driving the men to hate women, the old to hate the young, the parents to hate their children, the right to hate the left, the white to hate the black, the black to hate the white, all of it.
100%. And then what you have to do is you have to create a part of the population. You remember what Stalin used to say, I don't care who votes, I care who counts the votes. And he also said you need an army of useless idiots. Well, if you can get a portion of the population so upside down that they don't know the difference between a man and a woman or even know who they are, that is a malleable population to be able to hit and get them to do what it is you want them to do and to control and to steer them. And that's what we're seeing right now.
So that's what you just referred to as the manipulation of the education system into an indoctrination system rather than creating competent, critical thinking adults.
Yeah, exactly. And pop culture. Get your Hollywood stars to push, being trans is cool. And I spent 40 years in Hollywood. It's an operation. It's an information operation.
So I don't want to start a cage fight here, but I have to juxtapose what you just said against what Keith said, talking about the hope that this is going to be solved in the ballot box. If Keith is asserting that the citizens are going to rise up, make intelligent decisions, and make the right choices in the ballot box, and you're telling me that this fifth generation warfare concept, which I agree with, has taken such a demonstrative toll on society, how can we possibly put stock that anybody is going to make the right decision at the ballot box? And more, I want to address the other thing after, but I want to throw that out there. Whoever wants to take that, because these are two ideas here that are butting heads in my mind.
Another part of fifth generation warfare, I'm not disagreeing with Keith, but another part of fifth generation warfare is you have to corrupt the voting system. There is a gentleman, Lieutenant Scott Bennett, who is in my movie The War on Truth. You'll see him this Friday on it. And he lays out a series of shell companies that he says CCP owns Dominion voting machines. Okay? Now, that would be one way, if he's correct, that'd be one way for a foreign nation to come in. You grab a hold of the election system. So when people think they're doing the right thing, are they? Is our vote? So you have to go in and you have to thoroughly cleanse the voting system. I mean, and at this point, I don't know, Keith, what you think, but it may be, paper ballots.
I think paper ballots are the only way we're ever going to have a legitimate election in this country that people can audit and reliably investigate. What we saw last time was, when Biden supposedly won, I think a lot of people rightly think that election was fraudulent and stolen. But the reality is it's almost impossible to audit because of the way it was done. And so that sort of perfect crime can't be allowed to exist. We've got to do a lot to make sure that we've got paper ballots that are trackable. I mean, to your point that the idea of the citizens doing the right thing in the ballot box is contingent upon them having accurate information, that's totally true. But I'll point to shows just like this one. And there are plenty of other sources of information that go beyond what the mainstream legacy media offers. There's a growing number of people who are very interested in alternative ideas. And there's a growing number of people that 5 years ago would have been called conspiracy theorists who lately have all turned out to be right about most of the things they've alleged. And I think folks are catching on to that idea. Mm-hmm. When you look at what's happening with the budget and the shutdown that's looming, look at what the Democrats are saying. I used to think that Democrats were just better at marketing than Republicans, and I always wondered why. Recently, I've understood that it's not that they're better at marketing. They're more comfortable lying. So what they're saying right now about the pending shutdown is that Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. So if there is a shutdown, it must be the Republicans' fault. They're hoping that Americans aren't smart enough to realize that control in the Senate doesn't mean a simple majority. It takes 60 votes to pass things in the Senate. Democrats blocked the bill in the Senate, so it is, in fact, a Democrat-led shutdown. I have faith that the American people will be able to count to 60 and know that what the Democrats are saying just isn't true. This will be an interesting test to observe over the next few days.
The other thing I wanted to address, too, was Chris's comment about, I think, well-intentioned Americans not acting. And this is something that I've opined on my media for a long time. I recognize that something is, I'm not talking about me, I'm saying this in kind of a third person perspective. I recognize that something is wrong. I want to take action, but I can't take action because anything short of me just simply falling on my knees and praying will result in me facing the types of sanctions that people who found themselves on the front lawn of the Capitol building found themselves facing following January 6th. Any action will result in essence, the person you were being killed off. What is this worth to you? Is this worth having your entire life shattered? You can act as you think you need to, and then you spend the rest of your life either in prison, paying for it through civil penalties and lawsuits, having the label of a convicted felon. Either way, your life is over with. So at what point do people say, no, you know what? Enough is enough. Let's go. Or in the words of Al Bundy, let's rock. Because people are afraid. They don't want. And you know what? Maybe January 6th was more effective in terms of just the psychological warfare than we would ever give it credit for being. because people don't want to tangle with the power, the behemoth that is the government. So it keeps everybody in check. Everybody's nice. And what do? We just keep getting kicked. It's like the domestic violence victim. We keep getting our asses kicked, our noses bloodied, our teeth broken, our eyes bruised, and then we continue to make excuses about why, well, it's not that bad, and we really can't risk the unknown of action, so we'd rather stay in this abusive relationship with our own government. We started a revolution over a goddamn tax on tea, and today we have our government murdering people, we have our government locking people up without due process, we have political assassinations. We have people that are being hooked on drugs. We have the celebration of mental illnesses. And you know what? Well-intentioned people are just supposed to sit back and go, oh, well, I guess that's just how the cookie crumbles. Please pass the broccoli.
Courage is contagious.
And voting, what's the alternative? I mean, what you're stating is all true, of course. And I'm sure it was largely true during the revolutionary time when most citizens just stood by, or subjects, I suppose they were at the time. Most of them were fine just trying to comply their way out of tyranny. There were a handful of rebel rousers that were not okay trying to comply their way out of tyranny. And that turned out okay. So I think with any system of government, it can be reformed with the ordinary processes up to a point. I don't think we've reached anywhere near the point where our government cannot be reformed through ordinary processes. The Trump administration, if it conducts itself the way it has been, is hopefully going to push through a ton of change and eliminate a massive amount of bureaucracy. That should be able to reshape the size and scope of our federal government in a way that restores freedoms in a way that we haven't seen since before Reagan, probably.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say, right along with Keith, I'm pessimistic because I still don't see the sack in Republicans to continue what's being done. I don't. We've spoken about this before on my podcast. I don't see Republicans after Trump stepping up to continue what needs to be done.
It's not going to come from Republicans, and it's not going to come from the political system. It's going to come from the American people itself, guys. We're the only government, the only country in the world that has a bottom-up government, okay? The power of the people comes from here and it goes up. It doesn't come from kings going down. What has to happen is courage has to be contagious. What does it say 365 times in the Bible? It says, fear not. It says, fear not.
You're making me look bad because I don't have the answer to that. I'm sorry. And I read my Bible.
That's why they fear revival. Look, losing Charlie. Did you see the people rise up across the world for Charlie, this 30-year-old kid out of Arizona that was one of the smartest guys I've ever met? Okay, he inspired people. Why did kids reach to him? Because he said he brought back just common sense and a connection to God. If it wasn't for God, there would be no United States of America. My family fought in the Revolutionary War. They were Scots. They came over here, but they believed that freedom came from God, that freedom came from our Creator. And because of that, they had a higher duty and a higher calling. What is life worth if you and I, if all four of us don't leave a free country to our children? So the answer to your question is we have to stand. And we have to stand and we have to encourage each other, whether it's not wearing a mask the next time the supposed disease comes through, whether it's standing up saying, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm not racist. I just really believe this way. Or the next time someone comes up and says, you have to call that young man that's in a dress, ma'am, and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to pray for that person because they must be so confused and so lost and so unhappy. I'm not going to validate their feelings and make it change my community.
All right, unfortunately we have to take a quick break here. I would really like to have you guys back. I'd love to give you guys a full hour because I think, you know what, I'm ready to take the muzzle off and actually speak my mind on half of this stuff. Because I think we're rapidly getting to this point in the country where something has to change. Like the alcoholic that has to hit rock bottom before they can truly have that moment of clarity, that we have got to hit a certain point where there is no return. And I fear, to be honest with you, that while we're fighting amongst Americans, we're weakening ourselves and we're making ourselves prone to some type of invasion. But I don't know. Maybe it would take something like that to actually unify this country and bring it together.
You're correct. A near-death experience. You're 100% correct.
Yep.
A near-death experience is what will unify us.
Yeah, no, you could not be more correct. Before we let you go, Chris, if people want to check out the director's cut of The War on Truth, how can they do that?
It will be out this Friday on His Glory X account. It will be out on His Glory Rumble. And also you can go to hisglory.me or hisglory.tv. We're giving it away free to all of America.
Is there a way that Right America Media could simulcast that? You think that would be something that we could work out?
That would be a great question. If you could reach out to my team and I can take that to Pastor Dave, he would probably love that.
Okay. Yeah. Pastor Dave Dobmeyer?
No, but I know Dave Dobmeyer.
Okay.
He's outstanding.
I've worked with Dave in the past. So, okay. We'll have the production team get in touch with you, because if there was an opportunity to do a simulcast on Right America Media, I think that would be great. I know our viewers would love that. I definitely want to check that out, and I know I'm getting messages from other people that definitely want to see that. So, The War on Truth, the director's cut, 3+ hours coming up this Friday. So definitely something that you want to check out. And I think no matter what side of the political spectrum you happen to be on, maybe it's time to sit down and with an open mind watch something like this documentary. Chris Burgard, director of Capital Punishment, War on Truth, and this is an interesting fact. He was the body double for Matthew Broderick when Matthew Broderick was dancing during, you're never going to get away from that, from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. How cool is that? So, I want to thank you so much, Chris, for jumping on tonight. And Keith Gross, legal analyst and former assistant state attorney and prosecutor for the great state of Florida, the Gunshine State. Open carry, finally! Ho, ho! We never thought we'd see that. It's about time. All right, gentlemen, God bless. Stay safe. Be well. And we'll get you back on again for an extended conversation very, very soon. Thank you again. All right, going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to a private detective and a legitimate soldier of fortune, talking about what we know about the shooting and fire at the Michigan church. Much more of Granite State Live coming up right after this. Don't go away.
United We Stand. A Marine's Fight, written by Marine Corps veteran Julian Eschyard. This book examines the deepening fractures in our nation, political division, government overreach, and a fading sense of shared responsibility, and offers a battle-tested path forward. A Marine's Fight is a bold and urgent call to action for every American who believes in the founding ideals of our republic. United We Stand. A Marine's Fight can be purchased on Amazon.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving Southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
All right, up next, we have a friend of the show, Nils Gravilius. He is a Los Angeles-based private detective who conducts investigations without regard to local or national borders. He is quite literally the lawman's lawman. He is going to have a great conversation with me, as usual, and my co-host, Keith Hansen, who is a lawman himself. Nils, it is nice to have you on Granite State Live. I know I normally have you on mine, but I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Keith, who is a fellow lawman.
Well, good afternoon, gentlemen.
How are you doing today, sir?
I don't think I've ever enjoyed a nicer day. How are you, Julian?
It is hot. It is nice. It is beautiful in New Hampshire. Unfortunately, we have a lot of heavy news that we got to cover and some really dark topics. So tell us what you see with this Christ Latter-day Saints meeting house being shot up and driven into. What are we missing? What is the mainstream media missing? What is this narrative that everybody has? I'm seeing two competing narratives going about, and as usual, I'm sure you're going to poke holes through them.
Okay, well, let's take a closer look at Tom Sanford, and while we're at it, let's look at Nigel Max Edge, aka Sean de Beauvoir, the North Carolina shooter who was also a Marine. Within 24 hours, we had two mass shooting events. Looking at Tom Sanford, I have a lot of questions. How did this man successfully function for 4 years as a United States Marine? Whether he was deployed or not deployed, I know that he was deployed to Iraq in motor transport or as a recovery vehicle operator, that kind of thing. He did very well at that. He has no known criminal record. His family, without elaborating too much, has said that he struggled with drug addiction for years. I think I know which drug he was using.
Do you want to
somebody
say?
said that he had. I beg your pardon?
I said, do you want to say what it was or what you think it was?
I think it was high concentrate cannabis, either that or synthetic cannabis. The man was perfectly functional for years. He was even able to travel to other states to conduct business affairs in Utah, that sort of thing. Yes, he had a relationship with a Mormon woman in Utah. That may be incidental to his attack on the Mormon church. He was never a Mormon himself. He has expressed a fair amount of paranoia about the Mormon church. And it's irrational paranoia. His attack on the Mormon church, I think, arises of cannabis psychosis. Either that or just paranoid schizophrenia.
Was there any
he may
evidence?
have had a touch.
Did he do? Was he in combat? Was he combat deployed?
Yeah.
Okay. So
he was deployed.
Okay, so I'm just curious. Yeah, I'm just curious in terms of the connection, possibly because one of the worst things that you can see in terms of quasi psychotic violence is the introduction of alcohol to a person who has extensive PTSD. But I'm glad you brought up the cannabis thing, because the single greatest cause right now of irreversible psychosis is high THC concentration, primarily edibles, where you're seeing 60 to 90% THC concentrations in these edibles. And people who have no prior history of psychiatric illness or issues are having irreversible psychotic breaks as a result of this high THC concentration cannabis product. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, and we also have people pushing THC as a mitigation for PTSD with veterans, just like they're pushing microdoses of psilocybin mushrooms, microdosing of LSD, things like that, which are unproven. All of the people touting it claim that there are studies. I haven't seen anything to suggest that THC does anything for PTSD. I have seen, as the host has said, many men, many women pushed over into paranoid schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. I get bizarre missing persons cases. Like I had a PhD graduate student at UCLA a few years ago who just absolutely disappeared with no prior history of absenteeism, of criminal behavior, of domestic violence, of anything. And she was found booked as a Jane Doe in a hospital in another county. She had been wandering around in traffic, disoriented, and didn't know who she was. And it was all attributable to high concentrate THC. The noted author Evan Wright, who wrote Generation Kill, which I'm sure Julian's familiar with, he was embedded in the Marines in Iraq as a Rolling Stone journalist. He developed PTSD, and he was treating his PTSD with high concentrate cannabis, went into cannabis psychosis, and ate his gun in July of 2024.
On this,
but this man, Tom Sanford.
On this note, as somebody who was in combat, who does have PTSD and has used cannabis on occasion for pain, I can honestly say high concentrate THC has no real benefits to anybody suffering from PTSD.
Yeah,
like, as
that's
somebody
correct.
who has it, I can say what verifiably it has zero benefits to somebody suffering from PTSD. It's fine. It's fine for pain. Low level THC is fine for pain, and as opposed to opioids. But high level THC, I just don't see the benefits from it. I haven't seen a single study backing this, so I don't know where people are coming up with this.
My father fought in the biggest, ugliest battle of the Korean War in the 7th Marines. And he drank until he was 59 and died. Okay, and that was how he slept.
Mm-hmm.
He said the only way to switch the war off was with alcohol.
I've been there.
And it raged between his ears until the day he died. 7th Marines had to execute Chinese prisoners at the reservoir.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we're dealing with bad things here, okay? Tom Sanford, I don't know if he had PTSD or didn't. I know he was in combat at least once, according to his family members. He struggled with drug addiction. They were not specific about the drug, but he was otherwise responsible and capable and looked after his family right up until age 40. And then suddenly he goes into this paranoid rant. He talked to a political candidate a couple of weeks ago about not trusting the Mormon church or anything else, and then suddenly goes after this local Mormon stake and launches a horrendous attack on them. They're all completely innocent of whatever it was that he thought they were doing to them. Now we can go down to Nigel Max Edge, a.k.a. Sean de Beauvoir. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, almost the same age as Tom Sanford. He was a Purple Heart recipient from the United States Marine Corps. I don't know what his assignment was, whether he was a grunt or an Airedale or a motor transport or what he was. But he started filing bizarre lawsuits against one of the local churches there in North Carolina a few years ago, alleging that they were indoctrinating children in gay and lesbian things and whatever else. He lost the lawsuits because he was bizarre and disordered and out of line, that sort of thing. So he was in the throes of PTSD and paranoid schizophrenia, and yet the state never intervened to take away his Class 3 weapon. He had a suppressed short-barreled rifle, and that's what he launched his attack with. These firearms laws are absolutely meaningless if the states don't enforce them.
And that's something we've seen across the country, is that damn near every state has on the books already laws that allow them to take weapons away from people who launch credible, specific threats against a target and have the means to carry it out. And yet law enforcement multiple times doesn't intervene. Or, I'm sorry, when they do intervene and they interview the suspect, they don't take the guns. We've seen it with mass shootings with kids, with teenagers who were known to we've talked about on my podcast, where we've seen it with mass shooters who are interviewed by the school administrations. They were known to law enforcement. They were known to therapists. That we've seen it, and yet nothing happened when the opportunity was there.
Right.
So what's the point of a red flag law or new laws if the laws that are already there aren't being executed.
Precisely. The laws are meaningless, and the laws don't stand a constitutional test unless and until somebody tries to enforce one, and then it gets challenged in court. So that's how laws are shaped going down the line. But what I wanted to get to with both this man and Tom Sanford up in Michigan is they were functional men at one time. A paranoid schizophrenic couldn't make it through boot camp, couldn't make it through basic combat training, let alone ITR or anything like that. So something occurred, and typically when paranoid schizophrenia affects a male, he gets it between age 17 and age 24. So something occurred with these men who were, for all intents and purposes, highly functional at one time, and suddenly they are not. My belief is that both of them were using high concentrate THC, high concentrate cannabis, whether it was the organic green stuff or edibles or the synthetic that they vape or whatever. These men both had a break with reality, and other people suffered as the result.
So one of the things that would be very interesting to see would be the toxicology screen from the post-mortem would show, and if they actually do have elevated levels in their system. Again, I mean, your theory is as plausible as any that I've heard, probably more so, because again, this has been an area of research in clinical psychology that the number of, again, irreversible psychotic breaks as a result of that high concentration THC it's skyrocketing. And again, I use the word irreversible. This is not something that with medication compliant therapy that they're able actually to get back to a normal life. This is irreversible. You fried your noggin. That's it.
Yeah, you're precisely correct. It can be mitigated a little bit with psych meds, but by the time the state intervenes, these guys are pretty far gone, the women too. I'm going to point out that our government is fairly effective at some things in regard to substance abuse. You were in law enforcement. You know that stamping out cannabis is going to be impossible. There's always going to be somebody growing it somewhere for some purpose, and not everybody is affected the same way by it.
Correct.
But I'm going to say something. Between 1989 and today, our government launched a very effective psyop against tobacco. They made every cigarette smoker, every pipe smoker, every cigar smoker, every man and woman who dipped snuff feel ashamed of themselves for using those substances, that they were affecting their neighbors, their family, that sort of thing, and they should quit. In 1989, I think the figure was 47% of adult Americans were nicotine users of some sort. And I think it's as low as 11% now. And that includes stupid teenagers. Mm-hmm. So I know that our government could launch a highly effective psyop against cannabis use, even while allowing it to remain legal for certain purposes. But I'm not seeing anybody in government step up to this. They think they're going to get some wild amount of tax revenue from it. That was the impetus in Colorado and California, making it legal, quote unquote, for recreational purposes. Colorado's had the same problems that California's had with disoriented drivers out on the interstate losing their way, people going missing, people absentee from work, people giving the stuff to their children getting intoxicated by gummies and things like that. This is horrifying. And your earlier presentation, we were talking about fifth generation warfare. Well, in Army counterintelligence, we called that low intensity conflict. Yep. Okay, and it's as old as time. It goes back to Sun Tzu. Weaken the population with things like opium, with pornography, with licentiousness. Encourage people to be irresponsible, to be only self-centered, self-oriented, and lose all sense of duty to family, lose all sense of duty to the nation, that sort of thing. And that's exactly what we're in here. And government, yeah, they could launch a psyop, My belief is we need a spiritual renewal in this country, whether it's Christianity or just a general spiritual renewal, a sense of duty to the country and to each other and that sort of thing. Everybody is encouraged to just be whatever it is that they want, whether they want to lie in their filth on a street in San Francisco or abandon their children so they can go yoga hiking in the Rockies or whatever, all of this stuff. Everybody is so solipsistic to the point of self-destruction. That is what we're facing here. And it is encouraged in social media. It's encouraged in pop culture. People are taught to be vapid. Vapidity, vacuous pursuits are considered incredibly cool. Athletic achievement is looked down upon unless it's some spectacle that people can watch that involves violence and mayhem and that kind of thing. Where did sportsmanship go? Right? When I was a kid, if some player wanted to dance around in the end zone after scoring a touchdown, his coach would pull him off and he'd sit out the rest of the game. Now everybody claps and cheers. Right? Okay, it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
But think about it. The touchdown was the celebration, right?
I remember actually
playing.
I remember playing football, and if we did anything but pump our fist and help our brother up off the turf, we ran laps.
That's right. That's right. Now they're encouraged to do this stuff.
But
our coach made us.
I want to distill this because you hit on a good point. We're getting the music, so it's the end of the segment, but I want to distill that down real quick. You're talking about a cultural revival in the country. I've often said we are not going to cure where this nation is by instituting and enforcing new laws. We are going to do it by changing the culture of the country, and that means that conservatives and anyone who has any sort of right thinking of returning to a level of normalcy in this country needs to get up off their asses and start creating the content that you want to see. Is not good enough to lambaste the alternative. You have to be the alternative that people need to go to. That means supporting Angel Studios. That means supporting His Glory Studios. That means supporting better content overall.
I agree with you.
All right.
If we change our culture, we can change our customs, and customs are far more enduring and powerful than any law.
All right. Thank you, Nils Gravilius. I love having you on the show. Please tell everybody where they can find you, support your work.
Well, I'm on X, formerly Twitter, at Detective Nils. I'm running and gunning all over Los Angeles these days, lots of criminality, but I have my professional memoir, The Last Lawman, coming out on Post Hill Press in June of 2026. I want to thank both of you gentlemen for putting up with me this afternoon. I'm going to hit the bricks and go look for somebody.
All right, sounds good. Nils, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Get you back on again.
Be safe, gentlemen.
All right, we're going to take a very, very quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth telling hundreds of generals about the warrior ethos in a rare gathering. Trump talking at the Quantico Marine Corps base today. Interesting. You know what? Maybe this is a good change for the American military. We're going to have that conversation coming up when Granite State Live continues. Don't go away.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Forged in Chaos, a warrior's origin story. In this raw, anti-heroic tale, Tyler Gray dissects his life, exposing the unseen war within and exploring the question, what happens when the very abilities that made you a superhero in the eyes of the world turn you into a supervillain in your own life? Despite rising PTSD awareness, we're losing more warriors at home than in war. Forged in Chaos rips the mask off the warrior experience, exposing the truth that most never dare to face. Find Forged in Chaos, a warrior's origin story, written by Tyler Gray and Amazon.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at augustalawncareservices.com/Londonderry. That's augustalawncareservices.com/Londonderry. All right, welcome back to the 30th of September edition of Granite State Live. First of all, I got to give kudos to our producer, Juan. Thank you for getting bump music that actually kicks some butt. That is really nice, I got to be honest with you. So that is fantastic. All right, and the other thing, too, speaking of fantastic, if you're going to put up video webcams, I don't want to see Bourbon Street when there's nobody there. I don't want to see, what was the other one? I forgot where we were. I want to see Portland, Oregon, with Antifa members taking PR-24s to the side of the head. I want to watch these people having the shit pepperballed out of them. Do we have that by chance? That is entertainment. That is good programming. That is what I voted for. Look at this. We got a Ferris wheel. No, come on. I want to see Antifa members grabbing their crotch because they just took a stinger ball to the nuts. That's what I want to see. Got to be honest. Yep. And there's New Orleans. No beads, no debauchery, no homicides. That's pretty boring, actually. Yeah.
All right. Well, there's a lot of people up in arms, right? Pete Hegseth spoke at Quantico. Trump spoke at Quantico. Pete Hegseth had the gall to talk about the warrior ethos and about fat-ass officers with type 2 diabetes having to get in shape and take a PT test more than, twice a year. How dare he? As a Marine, when I served, this is something that was near and dear to our hearts. We had a lot of conversations about fat, waste of space officers who would stand up and tell us how motivating we had to be and about the warrior ethos and what it means to be a Marine. Meanwhile, you could see their fat rolling over their belt line. You could see them. They don't show up to PT with the troops. The Army and the Marine Corps, unlike the other forces, have this ethos of leading from the front. Our officers eat after we do. Troop welfare and morale are right up there with mission accomplishment, because if you don't have good morale, your warriors aren't going to fight right. And being in the military is about lethality, about fighting America's wars, about protecting freedom around the globe, right? So why are we listening to solipsistic, moronic leftists tell us The View went on a tirade about how he's being too mean to these officers who just want to serve their country? Well, guess what? Serving your country is not a right. It's a calling. It's a way of life. And if you're not ready for the way of life, then leave, because we don't want you.
I'd like to see Whoopi Goldberg haul her fat ass out onto a PT course.
I'd like to see, they a while back they decided Dana White sent a bunch of UFC fighters to go to Quantico to do the Marine Corps martial arts programs to learn, and they got their asses kicked for a week. I'd like to see the entire cast of The View, just do a day in boot camp. You can even make it soft for them, because I'm sure they're not going to be able to do jack shit.
Oh, I'm having a fantasy right now that involves Joy Behar taking an elbow to that snout. All right.
But we got an excellent guest coming on to talk about Pete Hegseth and everything he had to say. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. Really appreciate being on, and I've loved your commentary. It brings back a lot of memories.
Hey, Semper Fi, brother.
So, Colonel, we got to give you the proper intro. Colonel William Dunn, president of Strategic Resilience Group, author of Gunfighter's Rule. What are your thoughts about this when you see Hegseth talking about the ethos of the warrior, that these people, they have to be held to a standard? We're actually bringing standards back here. What the hell does anybody have a problem with here? I think if you're going to have a fighting force, you have to have a fighting force that can actually fight, not get winded running to put their boots on.
Well, that's right. And here, there's about 10 takeaways here, right? I don't even know which order. But number one, I joined the Marine Corps in 1983. Okay? I was 17 years old. We had the warrior ethos back then. I retired in 2016. We still had the warrior ethos. Several trips to combat with a bunch of Marines doing different things. We had the warrior ethos. So the warrior ethos is still there. What took place over the last, several years is you had an administration that took ideology, DEI above warfighting capability. Mm-hmm. And here's the takeaway. To me, this is the biggest takeaway. If there's any parents out there listening that have sons or daughters in the military, you should demand, not ask, not request. You should demand that only the best staff NCOs or staff non-commissioned officers, and officers, that only the best are put in charge of your sons and daughters, to command them, to take them into combat, to train them for combat. We need to demand it. We can never allow a Marine, a soldier or an airman or sailor to die because their leader was not the best available at the time. And that's where we got back to. So this is nothing new, right? It's like paying taxes. We've been always paying taxes. The military's always been ready to fight, willing to fight, put their life on the line. What we lost was that ethos because of an administration that really hurt us. And now we're taking it back. And as you can see, many of the militaries now, the services, they're meeting their goals, their recruiting goals. The Marine Corps always has, because, it takes a very special person, as you know, to be a Marine. You have to want it. You have to live it, love it. But all the services are, because now the parents, I believe, are seeing that their sons and daughters will be protected and not set out to be killed because of not only bad policy, but putting the wrong people in charge for no other reason than their DEI, their religion maybe, or their gender. And we can't have that. We should never have that. And we've put a stop to it finally. And hopefully, this is the key, gentlemen. We never want to go back. We can never go back.
So speaking of never going back, remember last time I had you on, I was a proud papa, right? Because my son had told me that he wants to enlist in the Marine Corps. My son is 14 years old, which means he will be enlisting at the end of the Trump administration. Now, my wife, having married me during my service, known every guy in my unit, and she was worried. And she wanted to have a sit down with my son. She just wanted to be present so she knew that we handled the conversation correctly. And she knew that only I could have that conversation with him. So we sat down with my son. Her worry was that at the end of the Trump administration, that there is a possibility that we're in the eye of a storm right now. And we have 4 years of what could seem like a return to normalcy, but we could very easily rubber band back to the same type of policies as the Biden administration should we get a Gavin Newsom or a AOC or Jasmine Crockett or any other batshit crazy progressive leftist in office. And she was worried because she knew when I was overseas, my brothers had my back. She knew that the Marines that came in the Marine Corps when I was in, that we were ready for the fight. And I always preface it, there's a story. When the Air Force, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Army, they for career day, they came and they set up their booths in our cafeteria. The Air Force was like, we'll pay for your college. The Navy was like, you'll get women all over the world. The Army was like, the Army was be all you can be the best version of yourself. We're going to turn you in the ultimate version of you. The Marine Corps was, we're the few and the proud. And I don't think you got it. And the reason why the Marine Corps was able to keep up their recruitment, even through the Biden administration, is because everybody else joins the military. People who join the Marines join the Marines. That just their ethos of the few and the proud, I don't think you can hack it, had everybody on the football team, basketball team, baseball team, wrestling team doing push-ups in front of the cafeteria to prove that they could hack it at boot camp. That warrior ethos was in the very pitch of the recruiter. When he stood there, he goes, you wanna be a Marine? Show us that you're good enough. That ethos is what Pete Hegseth is trying to bring back to the entirety of the military.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny you bring that up. So in the book Gunfighter's Rule, I talk about my early years enlisting in the Marine Corps. And growing up, my family has always been a family of service. There are many Air Force veterans. My father, my mother, they always called it the service.
Yep.
They would join the service. But when I was growing up, I would ask my dad about the Marine Corps because I would watch these war shows with him. And my dad, who was a tech sergeant in the Air Force, he was always like, the Marines are different. The Marines are special. They're Marines. Mm-hmm. And that is a substantial difference to the different militaries. I love all my brother, sister services, but most of them don't go, I'm an Army. They'll say I'm a sailor. I'm in the Navy, but in the Marine Corps, you are a Marine. And that is a very significant difference. And we do have a great ethos. But I'll also tell you, I go back to my earlier comment, this is nothing new.
Yep.
The Army has a PT test. The Navy, the Air Force, everybody has their own PT test. Where we got out of balance was what we call in the aviation world is normalization of deviance. Mm-hmm. Meaning, hey, you're a little overweight. Hey, you're a little, you almost passed the PFT. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, you're good to go. And that is where we fall short. And that is where we put our sons and daughters, your son potentially, in danger because you have a leader that is not capable of doing everything that is required of their, military occupational specialty. You have got to be the best. And when I was a squadron commander in Iraq, I would talk to my pilots and my crew chiefs, and I would tell them this story. I said, there's no parent that would allow their son or daughter to hop in a car inside the United States and drive across country, from Virginia to California with a stranger. Yet they will allow us to take their sons and daughters, put them in the back of our helicopters, take them to Iraq, put them in harm's way, and bring them home. They trust us for that, but they wouldn't trust us probably to drive them down the road because they don't know us. That obligation and that responsibility is not only sacred, but it requires a mental capacity and a physical capacity to answer the mail to protect the children of all, even though there may be a 25-year-old, there's still someone's child, to protect them as they go into harm's way. They should demand it. I demanded it of my Marines. They demanded it of me. And that's why we keep this ethos and protect our country.
I want to point this out because I think you'll reciprocate the understanding. When I say lead from the front, I had 2 officers when I served. I had Major Bailey and Captain Justice. Captain Justice, we called him T1000 when he was a LT and he was a platoon commander. He took us through CrossFit at the beginning of CrossFit when it first became a thing. We went on a run, then we did CrossFit, and then after CrossFit, then he went to work out and lift weights while we were crawling across the Camp Margarita back to the barracks. We were literally on hands and knees, barely able to walk, to go shower, shave, get ready for the rest of our day. And he went for another workout. We swore to God that guy sweat antifreeze. He was a philosophy major who read Sun Tzu, who believed in the timeless leadership, the Stoics. Then we had Captain Bailey. Captain Bailey, when we deployed, knew every single one of our family members by name. He was a Mustang. For those who don't know, that means he was a grunt. He was enlisted prior to becoming an officer. He was a scout sniper. He led our runs, and not just led our runs, he was faster than the vast majority of the men in the unit. When I say lead from the front, I mean men who are not just good leaders, but they are capable. They are physically capable of leadership. And that is what Pete Hegseth is trying to restore to our combat units, to our military units.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm not obviously I'm Marine biased, but I also believe our other services, they also try at least to lead from the front, and I'm not knocking them, but that is their requirement as well.
Yes.
There's, leaders eat last. And I got a great story. This one makes me so happy. So me and my first sergeant, we were deployed overseas, and we were living on a base called El Jabber. We had 140 Marines with us at the time. We were waiting for another 1,000 to come, and we had one little stove to cook all our food. We called it Hellboy. So this little stove, because we were waiting for the Air Force to give us a big stove, could cook. When I say little, it was probably about the size of a normal grill in your backyard. And that stove was feeding 140 Marines and sailors every day, 3 meals a day. So my first sergeant and I were going to another base, and on that base, they had a chow hall. They had every kind of restaurant you could imagine. And there was no chance that my first sergeant and I were going to eat one single thing on that base. There's no way, because our Marines were back eating off Hellboy. So we both decided, and I did not have to ask him, he didn't have to ask me. We both on our own decided we're not eating today. We get back to our base way, way after dinner, after chow time. The chow hall's been closed for an hour and a half. So we're like, hey, let's go walk over there and see if we can get an apple. Our Marines pulled out 2 meals that they had saved for us. And the sergeant says, I knew there was no way either one of you would eat at Arifjan. And to us, that's just normal business, right? It's the normal Marine thing. But the fact that our Marines knew that from us is how I believe nearly every single Marine in the Marine Corps is ideally being viewed by their troops, by their Marines and sailors, and how they should be looking at themselves when they're taking care of their men and women. Because
I do have to ask. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were finished there, because I want to throw this in, and I did have a comment about this earlier from a listener. Do you think that there is any connection between the meeting that Hegseth held, the conversation that he had, and potential skirmishes with Venezuela? Because things are heating up down there in Venezuela. Is this possible preparation for military action, or for military action perhaps with things heating up in the South China Sea?
I don't think so. We don't need to do extra preparation for those events. It's literally as simple as a combatant commander tasking his subordinate commanders, his general officers and flag officers, to get ready. The Marine Expeditionary Unit, 22 MEU, which was my MEU, I commanded that MEU back in the day. They're off the coast down there doing things. I don't know exactly where they're at, but I know they have the capability to strike an adversary, such as small patrol boats, if you will, or boats carrying drugs. It's a very formidable MAGTF, Marine Air Ground Task Force. But no, I don't think so. I think this was simple, set the stage. And this was my prediction, right, is get everybody together, Let them see the SecDef leadership from the front. There's a lot of comments I've seen, not only online, but on TV as well, of saying, well, here you got Pete Hegseth. He was a major, he mostly reserves. He's telling 4-star generals what to do. And the answer is absolutely he is.
Yep.
He's been appointed. He's been confirmed. He's the Secretary of War. He's the boss, period. We call it the supported and supporting commander. Whoever it is, the supported commander, you help, you support. Whoever's supporting, you do what you need to do to make that other commander successful. Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of War, period. Whether he was a corporal or a major or a 5-star general, right? It don't matter. Or whether he was a billionaire from, some, oil tycoon. It doesn't matter. He is the man that's been placed in charge at the pleasure of the president. But I do not think this meeting had anything to do with upcoming wars or upcoming skirmishes, because they're already preparing for those. I guarantee you. They're preparing for every eventuality. That's what I did when I was in. That's what every Marine does when they're in, is they prepare for what we think is going to be the next fight. And then we also prepare for the fight we don't know.
One of the things I think rings true, and one of the things I find very irresponsible with the rhetoric coming out of the media right now, is the trying to promote the idea of undermining the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of War, simply because the rank he held or because he was a reservist or so on and so forth, when everybody in the service, we come in and we immediately know our chain of command. And we also understand the difference between following the man and following the rank. You can follow the rank knowing that you don't like the man. You can divide the two. We do it with the president. The Secret Service does it on a regular basis. And I find it very, very irresponsible for the media to be pushing the idea that the military should do anything but that.
100%. You get command of a unit. Some of your Marines may love you. Some of your Marines may not like you. Mm-hmm. What they hopefully do is they believe and respect you for you taking care of them. So one of the I don't know if y'all happen to see Pete Hegseth today. I was able to watch his entire hour. The one thing he said over and over again is, I've got your back. I've got your back. The president has your back. As a leader, as a commander, you want your commander, your senior commanders to have your back.
Mm-hmm.
If you make a mistake, and I don't know one commander that hasn't made a mistake. I don't know a single Marine that hasn't made multiple mistakes, because that's what we do, right? We learn, we fight, we make mistakes. But when your boss has your back, that allows you to command and to take and train your men and women. And the other part that always bothers me, right? I came in the Marine Corps in 1983. You can do the math. I was 17, so that makes me old. 1983, I came in. The first thing that happened, the Beirut bombing. October 23rd, 1983, 241 Marine sailors and soldiers were killed by Hezbollah at the Beirut airport. I didn't know one single one of those Marines. I didn't know one of them. They were all just ahead of me. Some of them many years, some of them many months. But that blow to all of us was devastating. And from the entire time I was in the Marine Corps, we have been in some sort of war, some sort of conflict. Very few years have I ever been there when we were not physically, somebody in our military is not physically fighting somebody. So war fighting, and our job is to kill the enemy. That sometimes becomes hard for people to comprehend. Our job is to kill an enemy by any means necessary to win, obviously as long as it's in accordance with the Geneva Convention and the rules of war. But our job is to fight and win and to bring our men and women home, period. And it's an ugly business. And we do not want to go back into war. We need a president and an administration that makes our country strong enough to where we don't have to go back into war, because, people say you shouldn't say fear. Other countries shouldn't fear you. Well, What they should do is they should fear the results of an action that puts Americans in harm's way or kills Americans. They should fear the result. They should respect us until that point, but if they hurt our men and women, they should fear the result. And our president has shown that if you do certain things, he will destroy you to protect our men and women. And that's what we need.
Amen. That's exactly what we need. I often relate it back to good parenting. There should be a healthy balance of fear and respect that you have for your parents. We need to get back to that when it comes to the U.S. government, when it comes to the U.S. military, when it comes to parenting and society in general. There needs to be a balance of fear and respect. The worst thing you wanted to hear if you got in trouble was, I'm going to call your parents.
Yeah, that's right.
And the last thing the world wants
to hear is, I'm going to talk to the sergeant major.
Yeah. The last thing the world should want to hear is, we're sending in the U.S. military. You messed with the wrong people.
And we, I years ago I was at a friend's house, and he had some Dutch pilots over at his house. And so we were having a few cocktails with the Dutch. And so I asked him, I said, "Hey, what do you think about America?" And he looked at me and he goes, he kind of contemplated, he goes, "You're dangerous." And I said, "Okay, do tell, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, we know that if something is unsettled, American can come in and fix it. And sometimes that breaks things." And I like that. I like that comment. It's the old, General Mattis used to say, "No better friend, no worse enemy." That's how we should be seen as a country. No better friend, no worse enemy. But if you get on our fighting side, we're going to go all in and destroy you. And that's the way the world, I hope, sees us now. And I hope they always see us.
Amen. I want to give you a chance to plug your book and tell everybody where they can find you, support your work, sir.
Well, hey, I appreciate that. Yeah, so I wrote Gunfighter's Rule. I wrote the book in about 3 weeks. It's about my time in the Marine Corps from the time I was a very young lad. My father died when I was 11, and then my house burnt down, so I had to go through some trials and tribulations as a young lad. My salvation was joining the Marine Corps at 17. I knew from like the first day I was going to be there the rest of my life. And the book talks about being in combat during OIF 1, growing up in a military family, joining the Marine Corps, going to combat as a forward air controller, going all the way to Baghdad, surviving that, fortunately, and then making my way back to command the gunfighters, HMLA 369. Took 334 men and women back to Iraq, took the fight to the enemy, and we really showed them what it's like to mess with Marines. Brought everybody home from that, got all my aircraft out of there, and then I kind of closed the book out there, and you can get it on Amazon or anywhere you buy books. And then my website is colonelwilliamdunn.com, and if you get in there, you can see some of the stuff about the book.
All right, thank you, sir. I love having you on, and I love getting to talk to other Marines. I want to thank you for coming on and distilling down for the audience what real leadership and warrior ethos means to us who serve. Because one of my biggest pet peeves is hearing civilians tell Marines or service members in general what the service should be about and how we should purport ourselves.
Well, that's right. If you're going to stand next to me on the wall, the proverbial wall, you can talk about that. Yep. If you're not on the wall with me, I don't want to hear it. And I hope your boy joins the Marine Corps. And if he decides he wants to be a pilot, I would definitely go fly Cobras.
All right. I will let him know. He's definitely dead set on the Marine Corps. He just started JROTC.
That's motivate, new ride. And that, that's our future, right? That's our future right there. And I tell you, our future's bright. And our men and women that are coming in are gonna take us to the next level. Hopefully, we just can never go back. And that's got to be the next presidential election. We're not going back. We can never go back. Hopefully, that'll become the slogan. Keep America going forward or something, but never going back is what we got to do.
100%, sir. Thank you for coming on. That ends it for Granite State Live this week.
I was going to do it. That was Marine Corps Colonel William Dunn, president of Strategic Resilience Group, LLC. All right, so we are going to wrap it up here. We are going to continue again next week, for sure. Until then, folks, have a great week. Stay safe, be safe, and remember, be nice to one another. Believe it or not, even in these trying times, civility does work. God bless everybody.
Join the Ram TV Live family. It's growing bigger every day.
And watch the director's cut of War on Truth. I'm going to get that streaming on Red America Media. RamTV.live.